Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello, welcome to part 5 of How Not to Plan 2025. This is our final installment in the series. I hope you've been enjoying it. If you've missed any of the other episodes, I recommend that you check them out. Although I would say they're pretty good as standalones as well. So this one I'm so excited to talk about this one. When I was feeling into what I want to talk about, I was just like, ooh, this one is so alive in my field and in my own experience. So I'm super excited to share this with you. So number 5 is stop mistaking your wants for your desires. Stop mistaking your wants for your desires. The other day, I posted a reel on Instagram where I talked about coming up with our own definition of what consistency looks like. Now, I've struggled with consistency, and so has most of the people I work with in sessions. And what I found time and time again through conversations with others and through leading myself through my own process, breaking through kind of barriers and obstacles to doing something consistently, is that there's a tendency to be using definitions of consistency that are actually not authentic to us. So, for example, for me, there are certain endeavors where I don't want to do it every day. It doesn't feel right to me. I actually know my own rhythm. I'm pretty in touch with my own rhythm. And I'm pretty in touch with when I want to do the thing that I want to do, you know? And so the more pressure I put to quote unquote be consistent, I've often found that I end up resisting the thing, because what was more important for me was often committing to not stopping myself from working on my project when I feel the desire to work on it. Right? And so this was what I proposed in that reel. I proposed, if you struggle with consistency, try starting with making a commitment to not stop yourselves from doing the thing when you want to do the thing, right? Essentially. And then somebody left a really interesting comment, I think, disagreeing with my point. And they mentioned something about how feelings are fleeting, feelings are momentary, and we really only realize what matters after the high that we experience from wanting things kind of fades away, right? So I took some time to really reflect on this person's comment, because I thought the point that they made was really important and there's a lot of truth in it. But somehow there's a part of me that still disagreed. And I wanted to understand why I disagreed with them. And what I realized was that, to me, there's a very significant difference between wanting something and true desires. And I'm not sure if I've heard a lot of people talking about this distinction or really exploring the differences between wanting and true desires. To me, the feeling of merely wanting something is like an obsession, right? Like addiction. I know this feeling because it's akin to me wanting to eat desserts after every dinner. True story. It's similar to wanting to watch the next episode of the TV show I'm watching rather than taking a little bit of time to regroup, to be silent for a little bit, and then to pivot towards creative projects that I know matters to me. And so on the one hand, I agree with this person that often we need to exorcise, right? As in like exorcising the demons of these feelings of wanting things in order to touch in with what really matters. At the same time, I believe that true desires are something else altogether. I don't think that our desires are synonymous with the things that we want, at least not on a one-to-one basis. My experience with desires, especially the ones that I haven't fully taken the time to get to know, the ones I haven't spent a lot of energy trying to illuminate or trying to have conversations with them or trying to dance with them. My experience with these desires is more like fear, actually. It's what's more prevalent in my experience when I stumble upon these desires is like, ooh, like that feels too scary. I can't possibly go near them. And I experience the unexplored territories of my desires as fear, as immense nervousness, as coming close to this deep, dark abyss of the unknown. So the other day, I was talking to a mentor, and she said, what you fear has something for you. You fear it because there's something true in it for you. You fear it because likely there's something really profound for you to learn on the other side of that fear. And I couldn't stop thinking about it because it's so true. At least for me, I know this to be true. That oftentimes when I give myself permission to explore my fear, what I find is desire. What I find is truth. What I find is myself. And so I want to invite us all in this last part of the mini series to consider, how do I know when my desires are talking to me? What sensations are present when desire is in the room? What have my experiences in the past with desires taught me about the nature of true desires versus things that I just wanted, right? What resources do I need in order to touch in with my true desires? Now, I want to be really clear and say that there's nothing wrong with wanting things, right? We all want things all the time. I think that's part of human nature. I think that we also can practice clearing the things that we want, right, from our field. But underneath the things that we want, there's often a deep desire. It doesn't mean that it's easy to figure out what that desire is. Often desires are much more esoteric, much more numinous, and much less clear. For example, perhaps you want to find a stable long-term partnership, but perhaps the deeper desire, when you really touch into it, is that you desire to experience what it's like to be cherished by another person, to be affirmed in your authentic expressions, which may include expressions of joy and affection, but also perhaps include expressions of rage and anguish too. Perhaps the deeper desire is to be truly seen by another human being, right? I think that our wants, in this case, the wanting of a stable long-term partnership, are strategies that our minds believe can help us connect with the deeper underlying desires, right? And the reason why sometimes we still feel completely dissatisfied after getting what we think we want is because we haven't properly allowed ourselves to touch in with that greater field of desire. There's something missing when we don't allow ourselves to jump into that ocean of desire, right? We might get what we want on a surface level, but that doesn't mean that we get to really kind of quench that desire, right? We get to truly revel in the experience of being surrounded and embraced by that field of desire. In this case, for example, going back to this example of wanting a stable long-term partnership, how many of us have experienced being in one and somehow finding that you still see the gap, right? That your partner is still not able to fully and completely cherish you as a person and affirm you in all of your authentic expressions, right? The reality is that whatever it is that we do on a mundane level to try to quench that desire is always going to fall short on some level. And even when we achieve it and we touch in momentarily with that deep field of desire, the moment will pass, right? The high that we get from getting the thing will eventually pass. And along with that, if we confuse each and every single one of our wants with being the true desire, then we'll continue to seek, we'll continue to look for more, and we'll continue to be disappointed, right? If 2024 has taught me anything, it's that this work of really meeting our desire and really having a relationship with our desire is a complex process. It's certainly not something that I can instantly help you with through a 20 or so minute podcast episode, or sometimes not even in one session if we do work one-on-one. This is ongoing work that takes time. It takes commitment. It often requires deep relationship with a practitioner where both you and the practitioner co-create a container that you can trust. This work of touching in with that field of true desire is the work I inevitably end up doing a lot of the times in my long-term mentorship container. Perhaps because this work has also been one of the major themes in my own life, in my own journey as a creative person and as a mystic. And what I found through that experience is that as we allow ourselves to walk closer and closer in the pursuit of fulfilling the things that we want, we get to have a relationship with our desires. We get to really embrace our desires and become partners essentially with this desire, to merge with that desire as a source for fuel. That desire is truly a source of our vital life force energy. There are quite a lot of misunderstandings that we as a collective have around what desire even is. So I want to speak to that a little bit. One common misconception is that desires are exclusively sexual in nature. This is obviously not true, because as humans, our true desires, even the ones that took on the form of wanting certain sexual experiences, they themselves are rarely sexual in nature, right? It usually has to do with desiring to express oneself without any filters, or desiring to have a certain kind of experience without any inhibition, without any anything holding us back, right? We often what we really want is to show up in a way that the moment calls for. We desire to witness ourselves in the expression of whatever is alive for us within any given moment. And all of these are truly existential in nature rather than sexual or even romantic, right? So that's the first misconception, that desires are always sexual in nature. The second one is that desire can only be fulfilled if the want that's attached to the desire is achieved. I found in my own path that the point of desire is, as I mentioned, to actually build a relationship with that desire field, right? And allowing that relationship to transform us from the inside out. Giving ourselves permission to communicate and to connect with that desire is such a potent way of affirming ourselves that this really deep, this really important part of us is welcome. Touching in with our desires, with the want that's associated with that desire, and then allowing ourselves to move in the direction that desire is calling us towards, is these are really the building blocks of trust, right? That relationship of giving ourselves permission to move alongside that which moves us is what ultimately builds trust in oneself, trust in one's path, and trust in the cosmos itself, in the greater web of life. In other words, it's not about whether we end up achieving the thing that we want or not. Often, really, if we move in the direction of desire and we let ourselves be moved by that desire, it almost doesn't even matter what the outcome is, right? Because there's such deep satisfaction to following that impulse, to following that true calling that's coming from within us. It's really more about the permissioning and the process that the permissioning initiates within us. Okay, so how do we implement this awareness in our planning? Because I've just given you kind of this really meaty exploration, right, of desires versus wants. So if you have your schedule laid out in front of you, or you have the list of goals and the projects that you want to be working on this year, I first want you to bring that closer to you, or I want you to stare at it or touch it if it's in physical form. And I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to really feel the desire behind this schedule, behind these goals, behind these projects. What does that desire feel like in your body? Is there an image that comes to mind? Are there sensations moving through you? Is there a smell or a color that wants to associate with that desire? I want you to deeply connect with that underlying desire. And if you don't get clear information, that's okay. I want you to keep trying. I want you to understand that your desires are primal. Your desires are deep. They're archetypal. They may be cosmic. They may be ancestral. They may be evolutionary. They're much, much bigger than the goals, than the projects, than the resolutions. They're much, much bigger than you and your current existence. And I want you to honor that desire. I want you to have a reverent, deep relationship with that desire. And then from that place, I want you to go after what you want freely, without the pressure, without the bondage of needing to get them fulfilled. There's a special kind of liberation that happens when we touch in with the true desires, with that ocean, with that field, with that swirl, that Fibonacci sequence of desire. When we build a relationship with these desires, we liberate the things that we want from needing to fill an existential hole. The truth is, you are already perfect in your wholeness, in the wholeness of who you are and who you've always been. When you remember your wholeness, when you remember your inherent perfection, you give yourself permission to continually fill the holes in your being, the places that your mind believes need to be covered up by achieving things in a material world. When you remember that you're whole and that you're perfect as you are, you're emboldened to approach that dragon of desire that awaits you deep, deep in the cave of your psyche, waiting to take you flying and soaring through this cosmos. So touch in with that desire and give yourself permission to be so curious about all the desires that underlie the things that you want to accomplish for the coming year. And really allow the act of going after these goals and these aspirations as pathways to getting to know your desire a little bit better. All right, friends, that is the end of our 5-part mini series on how not to plan 2025. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, I would be deeply appreciative if you would like to leave a review or a comment, or maybe share this episode with people in your community, with loved ones that you believe will enjoy this episode. And for those of you who would like to work with me more deeply in a one-on-one capacity, all the info are in the links below. And yeah, reach out to me. I would love to work with you if it feels like a good fit, and if it feels like it's if it feels like it would be beneficial for you. I would love to be of service. All right, thank you everyone, and I will be back in a few days with contemplations for February. We are almost done with our first month, and yeah, I'm excited. All right. I hope you take good care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon. Take care.